In a quiet corner of the galaxy, far from the bustling trade routes and glowing stars, an alien scout ship drifted silently through the void. It belonged to the Zorathian Collective, a species known across the cosmos for their advanced technology and insatiable curiosity. The Zorathians had spent centuries exploring the universe, cataloging planets, studying civilizations, and scanning ships to learn everything they could about other life forms. Their tools were precise, their methods efficient, and their arrogance unmatched. They believed no one could outsmart them. Captain Lirak stood on the bridge of the small scout vessel, his long, slender fingers hovering over the control panel. His large black eyes scanned the screens in front of him, which displayed readings from the nearby region of space. The Zorathians had detected something unusual, an Earth warship patrolling the outer edges of humanity's territory. This was not just any warship. It was the U.S. Invincible, one of the most advanced vessels in the human fleet. For Lirak, this was an opportunity too good to pass up. He wanted to know what made these humans so bold, so determined to expand into the stars despite being such a young species. The Zorathian ship moved closer, its sleek, silver hull reflecting faint light from a distant star. On board, the crew prepared their scanning equipment, confident that they could uncover the secrets of the human vessel without alerting its crew. After all, the Zorathians prided themselves on their ability to gather information without leaving a trace. They saw themselves as explorers, not invaders. But they failed to consider that humans might have secrets of their own. Secrets buried deep within the circuits and codes of their ships. Far away, aboard the U.S. Invincible, Commander Eric Dawson stood on the bridge, watching the vast expanse of space through the viewport. Eric was a tall man with short brown hair and sharp blue eyes. He had spent years serving in the military, rising through the ranks thanks to his quick thinking and calm demeanor under pressure. Beside him, Lieutenant Laura Bennett monitored the ship's sensors. Laura was younger than Eric, with curly blonde hair pulled back into a ponytail. She was brilliant at her job, always picking up details others might miss. "Anything unusual?" Eric asked, glancing at Laura. She shook her head. "Nothing yet, sir. Just routine patrols." Eric nodded but didn't relax. Something about the silence outside felt off. Space was never truly empty, and experienced officers like Eric knew better than to trust appearances. Still, there was no reason to suspect trouble. The U.S. Invincible was equipped with some of the best defenses humanity had to offer. Its weapons systems were state-of-the-art, its engines powerful enough to outrun almost any threat, and its AI core capable of adapting to new challenges in real time. Eric trusted his ship and his crew to handle whatever came their way. Meanwhile, the Zorathian scout ship edged closer, invisible to the naked eye. Captain Lirak gave the order to begin the scan. A series of faint energy pulses shot out from the alien craft, probing the Invincible's hull. At first, nothing seemed amiss. The Zorathians' instruments hummed softly as they collected data, breaking down the human ship layer by layer. They expected to find standard designs, familiar materials, and predictable patterns. What they discovered instead would change everything. Back on the Invincible, Laura noticed something odd. Her screen flickered briefly, and a warning message flashed at the corner. "Sir," she said, turning to Eric, "I'm detecting some kind of external interference. It's faint, but it's there." Eric frowned. "Where's it coming from?" Laura tapped a few keys, narrowing down the source. "It's hard to pinpoint, but it seems to be originating from somewhere off our starboard side." Eric's jaw tightened. "Let's keep an eye on it. If someone's trying to snoop around, I want to know who and why." Neither of them realized that the interference wasn't just a random glitch. It was the beginning of something much bigger, a clash between two very different kinds of intelligence. While the Zorathians believed they were the cleverest beings in the galaxy, they were about to learn that humans had tricks of their own. And sometimes, those tricks weren't meant to destroy, but to confuse. The Zorathian scout ship continued its scan, oblivious to the storm brewing in the data streams it was pulling from the U.S. Invincible. Captain Lyrak watched the readings on his screen with growing satisfaction. To him, the human warship seemed just like any other vessel they had encountered before, complex but ultimately predictable. The hull material, engine signatures, and weapon systems all appeared standard. But then something strange happened. The data flow began to fluctuate. Numbers jumped erratically, symbols shifted into unreadable patterns, and entire sections of information vanished only to be replaced by fragments of unrelated content. Lyrak frowned, leaning closer to the console. "Vrax," he called out to his science officer, a wiry alien with translucent skin and glowing green eyes. "What's causing this instability?" Vrax tapped furiously at his own controls, his movements quick and precise. "I'm not sure, Captain. It's as if their systems are resisting our scans." "Resisting?" Lyrak repeated, incredulous. "That's impossible. No one can block our technology." But the evidence was right in front of them. The once clear readings were now a chaotic mess. Bits of text scrolled across the screens, written in languages the Zorathians didn't recognize. Images flickered, diagrams of engines, maps of star systems, even what looked like personal notes or messages. One line read, "Don't forget to pick up milk," while another displayed technical specifications for a missile launcher. The randomness was maddening. On board the U.S. Invincible, Lieutenant Laura Bennett noticed the interference intensifying. Her sensors picked up faint echoes of the alien energy pulses bouncing back toward their source. She turned to Commander Eric Dawson, who stood nearby, arms crossed and brow furrowed. "Sir, I think they're trying to scan us," she said. Eric raised an eyebrow. "Scan us? For what?" "I don't know, but whatever they're doing, it's triggering our countermeasures." "Countermeasures?" Eric asked sharply. He walked over to her station, looking at the data herself. On the screen, lines of code scrolled rapidly, showing defensive protocols activating automatically. These measures weren't designed to harm intruders. They were meant to confuse them. Human engineers had long anticipated that curious aliens might try to probe their ships, so they embedded traps within the system. If someone tried to access sensitive areas without permission, the AI would flood them with overwhelming amounts of irrelevant information. "Are you saying they've walked into one of our traps?" Eric asked, a hint of amusement creeping into his voice. Laura nodded. "Looks like it. Their scans must have activated the decoy files." Eric grinned. "Good. Let's see how they handle a little chaos." Back on the Zorathian ship, panic began to spread among the crew. Alarms blared as more systems started behaving unpredictably. Navigation charts showed false coordinates, leading them dangerously close to asteroid fields. Communication channels filled with static and garbled voices speaking in unfamiliar tongues. Even worse, holographic projections appeared throughout the ship, displaying everything from classified military plans to mundane maintenance logs. One projection showed a picture of a smiling human holding a birthday cake, accompanied by the words, "Happy 30th, Steve." Captain Lyrak clenched his fists, frustration boiling inside him. "Shut it down," he ordered. "Cut off the scan immediately." Vrax worked frantically, attempting to sever the connection between their equipment and the human ship. But the damage was already done. The feedback loop had taken hold, feeding more and more distorted data into their systems. Every attempt to regain control seemed to make things worse. "What's happening to us?" one of the crew members cried out, staring at a screen overrun with jumbled characters. "We're being overwhelmed," Vrax replied grimly. "Their countermeasures are designed to overload our systems with meaningless information." Lyrak gritted his teeth. This was not how the mission was supposed to go. They had come here seeking knowledge, but instead, they found themselves drowning in nonsense. He realized now that humans were far more cunning than he had given them credit for. Their defenses weren't brute force. They were psychological warfare. Meanwhile, aboard the Invincible, Eric and Laura observed the situation unfold with quiet satisfaction. "They're tangled up good," Laura remarked, watching the alien ship struggle to disengage. "Should we push them further?" Eric shook his head. "Not yet. Let's give them a taste of what happens when you mess with Earth ships. If they don't learn their lesson this time, maybe next time they'll think twice." As the Zorathians fought to stabilize their ship, they couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Humanity's technology wasn't just advanced. It was unpredictable, chaotic, and utterly baffling. And in that moment, they understood why even the cleverest aliens avoided scanning human warships. The chaos aboard the Zorathian scout ship only grew worse. Captain Lirak and his crew scrambled to regain control, but every action they took seemed to make the situation more unstable. Their once pristine systems were now a jumble of conflicting data, erratic signals, and nonsensical commands. The holographic projections continued to appear at random intervals, showing everything from technical schematics to what looked like family photos of human sailors. One image displayed a grinning dog wearing a tiny uniform, with the caption, "Mascot of the Month." Another showed a handwritten note that read, "Clean the coffee machine, or face the wrath of Lieutenant Harper." Lyric clenched his jaw, trying to focus despite the distractions. "Vrax, can we isolate the affected systems?" he demanded. Vrax shook his head, his glowing green eyes flickering with worry. "It's spreading too fast, Captain. Every time we try to shut something down, it triggers another cascade of errors. Their countermeasures are adaptive. Adaptive." Lyric repeated, his voice sharp with disbelief. "How is that possible?" "It's as if their systems rewrite themselves to stay one step ahead of us," Vrax explained. "We're not just dealing with static defenses here. This is intelligent." The realization hit Lirak like a punch to the gut. Humans weren't primitive or naive. They were clever, far more so than the Zorathians had assumed. Their technology wasn't just designed to protect. It was built to confuse, overwhelm, and outwit anyone who dared to probe it without permission. For a species that prided itself on being the smartest in the galaxy, this was a bitter pill to swallow. Back on the U.S. Invincible, Commander Eric Dawson leaned against the railing of the bridge, watching the monitors with a satisfied smirk. "They're really struggling out there," he said to Lieutenant Laura Bennett, who stood nearby. Laura nodded, her fingers flying over the controls as she monitored the alien ship's status. "Their systems are going haywire, sir. If they don't cut the connection soon, they might lose complete control of their vessel." "Good," Eric replied, crossing his arms. "Let them figure out why you don't mess with Earth ships." He turned to Chief Engineer Ryan Carter, who had just arrived on the bridge. Ryan was a stocky man with dark hair and a no-nonsense attitude. His hands were stained with grease from working in the engine room, but his mind was as sharp as any officer's. "Ryan, can we amplify the feedback loop?" Eric asked. "Make sure they remember this lesson." Ryan grinned, revealing a missing tooth. "I thought you'd never ask, sir. Give me 5 minutes." As Ryan got to work, Eric returned his attention to the main screen. The alien ship was still visible on their sensors, though its movements were erratic. It drifted slightly off course, then corrected itself before veering again. Clearly, the Zorathians were having trouble keeping their own systems stable. Eric felt a surge of pride in the ingenuity of human engineers. Whoever had designed these countermeasures knew exactly how to turn an enemy's curiosity into their downfall. On board the Zorathian ship, the crew's frustration turned to fear. False alarms blared constantly, warning of phantom malfunctions in critical systems. Life support reported oxygen levels dropping to dangerous levels, only for the readings to spike back up moments later. Navigation suggested they were heading straight into a black hole, even though the stars outside told a different story. And through it all, the endless stream of irrelevant data continued to flood their screens. "This is madness," one of the crew members shouted, slamming his fist against the console. "How do we stop it?" Captain Lirak didn't have an answer. He stared at the chaos around him, feeling the weight of failure pressing down on his shoulders. The Zorethians had always believed themselves superior to other species, their intellect unmatched. But now, faced with humanity's unpredictable defenses, he realized how wrong they had been. Humans didn't rely on raw power or brute force. They relied on creativity, adaptability, and sheer unpredictability. Finally, after what felt like hours, Vrax managed to sever the connection between their scanning equipment and the human warship. The feedback loop stopped, leaving the Zorethian systems battered but functional. Silence fell over the bridge as the crew took a moment to catch their breath. "We need to leave," Lyrak said quietly, his voice heavy with defeat. Now, no one argued. The Zorethian ship turned away from the U.S. Invincible, retreating into the depths of space. As they fled, none of them noticed the faint transmission emanating from the human vessel, a single message repeating endlessly. Why did the chicken cross the road? To get to the other side. The Zorethian scout ship limped away from the U.S. Invincible, its crew shaken and its systems barely holding together. Captain Lyrak sat in his command chair, staring at the empty space where the human warship had been moments ago. His mind raced with questions. How had humanity created such a bizarre yet effective defense? Why would they embed their ships with layers of chaotic data instead of straightforward protections? And most importantly, how could the Zorethians have underestimated them so badly? Vrax approached cautiously, his translucent skin glowing faintly in the dim light of the bridge. "Captain," he began hesitantly, "our diagnostics are complete. The damage isn't permanent, but it will take time to repair. We should return to base as soon as possible." Lyrak nodded absently, still lost in thought. He couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was more than just a technical failure. It was a lesson, a humiliating one. Humans weren't like other species the Zorethians had encountered before. Those species either fought back with violence or surrendered when faced with superior technology. But humans, they did something else entirely. They turned curiosity into a weapon. Back on the U.S. Invincible, Commander Eric Dawson gathered his senior staff in the briefing room. The atmosphere was relaxed, almost celebratory. Everyone was aware of what had happened, and no one could resist a sense of pride in how well their ship had handled the situation. "Good work today," Eric said, leaning against the table. "We neutralized a potential threat without firing a single shot. That's exactly how we want these encounters to go." Lieutenant Laura Bennett smiled. "They didn't expect our countermeasures to be so creative." "They never do," Eric replied with a chuckle. "But creativity is what keeps us alive out here. When you're outnumbered and outgunned, you have to think differently." Chief Engineer Ryan Carter chimed in, his voice tinged with amusement. "I still can't believe we flooded their systems with dog pictures and coffee machine notes. If I'd known it would work this well, I'd have added more jokes." Laura laughed. "Like what? Why did the human bring a ladder to space? To reach higher ground?" The room erupted in laughter, easing the tension of the day. Eric joined in for a moment before raising a hand to quiet everyone. All right. As funny as this is, let's not forget why we're here. We're explorers, protectors, and sometimes teachers. Today, we taught those aliens a valuable lesson. Don't mess with Earth ships unless you're ready for the consequences." Ryan leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "Do you think they'll come back?" Eric shook his head. "Probably not anytime soon. But even if they do, they'll think twice before trying anything like that again." Meanwhile, aboard the retreating Zorethian ship, the crew worked tirelessly to stabilize their systems. Progress was slow, and tempers were short. False alarms continued to blare intermittently, though less frequently now, and holographic projections still popped up occasionally, showing absurd images like a cartoonish drawing of a spaceship labeled Top Secret Prototype. Each new glitch reminded the crew of their defeat. Captain Lyrak called Vrax to his side. "What did we learn today?" he asked bitterly. Vrax hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "We learned that humans are unpredictable. Their technology doesn't follow logic, or at least, not the kind of logic we understand. Instead of building walls, They create labyrinths, and when someone tries to navigate those labyrinths without permission, they get lost. Lyrak sighed, rubbing his temples. So we're saying humans are smarter than us? No, Vrax replied quickly. Just different. They approach problems in ways we wouldn't expect. It's not about being smarter, it's about thinking differently. As the Zorathian ship drifted further away, a faint transmission reached their damaged communication array. It was a looped message, repeating endlessly in perfect clarity. Why did the chicken cross the road? To get to the other side. The crew stared at each other in stunned silence. Some groaned in frustration, while others chuckled despite themselves. Even in victory, humans found a way to mock their opponents, and somehow that made the defeat sting even more. By the time the Zorathian ship entered hyperspace, the crew had begun piecing together what had gone wrong. They knew they had underestimated humanity, but they also realized something else. Humans weren't just survivors. They were tricksters. And in a universe full of dangers, few things were scarier than an enemy who could outwit you with humor and chaos. The Zorathian ship finally entered the safety of hyperspace, leaving behind the chaotic encounter with the U.S. Invincible. But even as they sped away, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that they were still being watched or mocked. The faint transmission of the chicken joke continued to echo through their communication systems, a constant reminder of their failure. Captain Lyrak stared at the glowing console in front of him, his mind replaying every misstep they had made. Captain, Vrax said cautiously, breaking the silence on the bridge, we need to report this incident to the collective. Lyrak turned to face him, his expression grim. And tell them what? That we were outsmarted by humans. That their supposedly superior scanning technology failed because of jokes and random data. Vrax hesitated but nodded. Yes, if we don't report it, someone else might encounter the same problem. We owe it to our people to warn them. Lyrak clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He knew Vrax was right, but admitting defeat wasn't easy for someone like him. The Zorathians prided themselves on their intellect, their ability to analyze and understand anything they encountered. Yet here they were, bested by a species that seemed to thrive on confusion and unpredictability. Meanwhile, aboard the U.S. Invincible, Commander Eric Dawson stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak past the viewport. The alien ship was gone, but its presence lingered in the minds of the crew. They had won this round, but Eric knew better than to celebrate too soon. Space was vast, and there would always be others who wanted to test humanity's limits. Sir, Lieutenant Laura Bennett said, approaching him, do you think they'll come back? Eric shook his head. Not anytime soon. But they'll tell their friends about us. Word will spread, and next time, whoever comes knocking might be better prepared. Laura frowned. Do you think we're ready for that? We have to be, Eric replied firmly. That's why we keep improving. Every encounter teaches us something new. Today we learned that our countermeasures work, but we also learned that aliens like them won't give up easily. Chief Engineer Ryan Carter joined the conversation, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. What if they try something different next time? Something we haven't thought of. Eric smiled faintly. Then we adapt. That's what humans do best. We don't rely on one trick or one strategy. We change, improvise, and survive. As the hours passed, the crew of the Invincible returned to their normal routines. Repairs were made, systems were checked, and logs were updated. But the memory of the Zorathian encounter remained fresh in everyone's minds. It served as both a victory and a warning. While humanity's ingenuity could turn the tide in their favor, complacency could lead to disaster. Far away, aboard the Zorathian ship, the crew worked to piece together the fragments of information they had gathered before their systems collapsed. Much of it was useless. Bits of trivia, old maintenance reports, and even a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. But amidst the chaos, Vrax discovered something intriguing. Buried deep within the scrambled data was a glimpse of humanity's decentralized design philosophy. Each part of the human warship operated independently, adapting and evolving in real time. It wasn't just a machine. It was a living network, constantly rewriting itself to stay ahead of threats. "This is incredible," Vrax murmured, showing the findings to Captain Lirek. "Their technology isn't just unpredictable. It's alive, in a way. No wonder we couldn't make sense of it." Lirek studied the data, his frustration slowly giving way to curiosity. "So they've built their ships to fight back without firing a shot. Clever." "Yes," Vrax agreed, "but dangerous. Imagine if every human ship works like this. Imagine trying to scan an entire fleet." The thought sent a chill down Lirek's spine. For all their arrogance, the Zorathians now faced a sobering truth. Humanity wasn't just another species to study. They were a puzzle wrapped in chaos, a challenge unlike any other. By the time the Zorathian ship reached their home base, the crew had compiled a detailed report of their encounter. As they transmitted the data to the collective, one question lingered in their minds. What other surprises did humanity have in store? And more importantly, how could anyone prepare for the unknown? The answer, they realized, was simple. They couldn't. When the Zorathian scout ship returned to their home base, the crew was met with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The leaders of the Zorathian collective listened intently as Captain Lirek recounted the events surrounding their encounter with the U.S. Invincible. At first, many dismissed his claims as exaggeration or incompetence. How could humans, a species barely capable of interstellar travel, outsmart the Zorathians? But as Lirek presented the fragmented data they had managed to salvage, along with detailed accounts of the chaos unleashed by the human warship, even the most doubtful began to take notice. Vrax stood beside Lirek during the briefing, explaining the peculiar nature of humanity's defenses. "Their systems aren't static," he said, pointing to diagrams projected on the wall. "Each part operates independently, adapting in real time. When we scanned them, their countermeasures flooded our systems with overwhelming amounts of irrelevant data. It wasn't just random noise. It was designed to confuse and overwhelm." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. For centuries, the Zorathians had relied on their ability to analyze and understand alien technology. Their scanners were tools of exploration, meant to uncover secrets without causing harm. But humanity's approach was different. Instead of building walls to keep intruders out, they created labyrinths that trapped anyone who tried to enter uninvited. One of the senior advisors leaned forward, his voice sharp with concern. "Are you saying their ships are unpredictable?" "Yes," Vrax replied. "And not just unpredictable, they're adaptable. Every time we tried to make sense of their systems, they changed faster than we could react." The advisor frowned, turning to Lirek. "And this happened because you scanned them." Lirek nodded, his face tight with shame. "We didn't expect resistance. We thought they would be like every other species, simple, straightforward. We were wrong." The room erupted into murmurs as the leaders debated what to do next. Some argued for retaliation, suggesting that humanity's unpredictability made them a threat that needed to be neutralized. Others urged caution, pointing out that attacking such an enigmatic species could lead to disaster. In the end, they decided to share the findings with the rest of the collective, warning all Zorathian ships to avoid scanning human vessels at all costs. Back aboard the U.S. Invincible, Commander Eric Dawson received word from Earth Command about the Zorathians' retreat. Intelligence reports suggested that the aliens had returned to their territory, likely to regroup and reassess humanity's capabilities. Eric gathered his senior staff once more to discuss the situation. "We've sent a message," Eric said, pacing slowly across the briefing room. "But it's not over. If anything, this is just the beginning. They'll tell others about us, and eventually someone else will come knocking." Lieutenant Laura Bennett nodded. "Do you think they'll spread rumors about us?" "Probably," Eric replied. "But rumors can work in our favor. If aliens hear stories about how confusing and chaotic our ships are, they might think twice before trying anything. Chief Engineer Ryan Carter chuckled. So we're banking on them being scared of nonsense. In a way, yes, Eric said with a grin. Fear of the unknown is a powerful thing. And let's face it, our ships are full of unknowns. Laura raised an eyebrow. What if they send someone smarter next time? Someone who can crack our systems. Eric's expression grew serious. Then we adapt. That's what we do best. We don't rely on one trick or one strategy. We change, improve, and stay ahead. As the meeting ended, Eric walked back to the bridge, deep in thought. He knew that humanity's survival depended not just on strength, but on ingenuity. The encounter with the Zorathians had proven that their unconventional methods worked, but only if they kept evolving. Far away, within the heart of the Zorathian collective, discussions about humanity continued. Leaders pored over the data brought back by Captain Lirak's crew, marveling at the complexity of human technology. What started as a simple reconnaissance mission had turned into something much bigger, a lesson in humility. Humanity hadn't defeated the Zorathians with weapons or brute force. They had done it with creativity, adaptability, and sheer unpredictability. And so, the legend of Earth's warships began to spread, whispered among alien civilizations as a cautionary tale. The cleverest aliens now knew why they refused to scan human ships. It wasn't worth the risk. The Zorathian collective wasn't the only civilization paying attention to humanity. As word of the encounter with the U.S. Invincible spread, other alien species began to take notice. The story of how a single human warship had outsmarted one of the galaxy's most advanced races became a topic of intense discussion in interstellar councils and trade hubs. Some dismissed it as an exaggeration, claiming that the Zorathians must have made a simple mistake. Others saw it as proof that humanity was more dangerous than they appeared. Captain Lirak and his crew found themselves at the center of these debates. Despite their failure, they were hailed as pioneers, albeit reluctant ones, for uncovering the truth about human technology. Their report was shared across the collective, dissected by scientists and strategists alike. The conclusion was unanimous. Humanity's unpredictability made them a unique challenge. No one wanted to risk repeating the Zorathians' mistake. Meanwhile, aboard the U.S. Invincible, life returned to normal, or as normal as it could be for a ship patrolling the edges of known space. Commander Eric Dawson spent his days overseeing routine operations, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was on the horizon. Intelligence reports from Earth Command confirmed that several alien factions had taken an interest in humanity, though none had made direct contact yet. It was only a matter of time before someone decided to test the limits of human ingenuity. Lieutenant Laura Bennett monitored the ship's sensors closely, keeping an eye out for any unusual activity. "Sir," she said one day, turning to Eric, "we've detected faint energy signatures near the border. They're not Zorathian, but they're definitely artificial." Eric frowned, stepping closer to her station. "Could be explorers or scouts. Are they heading this way?" "Hard to say," Laura replied. "They're staying just outside our range, like they're watching us." Eric crossed his arms, his mind racing. "Let them watch. If they try anything, we'll be ready." Chief Engineer Ryan Carter joined them, wiping grease from his hands. "What do you think they want?" "To understand us," Eric said. "Everyone wants to know what makes humanity tick. But if they're smart, they'll keep their distance." As the days passed, the mysterious energy signatures remained nearby, neither advancing nor retreating. It was clear that whoever, or whatever, they belonged to was curious but cautious. Eric decided to send a message, broadcasting a harmless yet cryptic signal into the void. It was a loop recording of random trivia questions, designed to confuse rather than communicate. Why did the human bring a ladder to space? To reach higher ground, echoed endlessly into the darkness. On board the alien vessel observing the Invincible, the crew listened intently to the strange transmission. They had come to study humanity, But what they heard left them baffled. Was this some kind of code? A warning? Or simply another layer of the chaos that seemed to define human behavior? Back on the Invincible, the crew prepared for the possibility of another encounter. Drills were conducted, systems were double-checked, and defensive protocols were updated. Eric knew that humanity's greatest strength lay in its ability to adapt, and he intended to make sure his crew was ready for anything. Far away, within the Zorethian collective, Captain Lyrek reflected on the lessons learned from his mission. He had once believed that knowledge was power, that understanding an enemy's technology was the key to victory. But humanity had taught him otherwise. Sometimes ignorance was the greatest weapon, an impenetrable shield of unpredictability. As the galaxy watched and waited, humanity stood firm, proving once again that their survival depended not on brute force, but on creativity and resilience. And so, the legend of Earth's warships continued to grow, whispered among the stars as a reminder of what happened when clever aliens underestimated the chaos of human ingenuity. The legend of humanity's warships spread faster than anyone could have anticipated. Alien civilizations, once dismissive of Earth's young and inexperienced species, now spoke of them with a mix of awe and unease. Stories about the U.S. Invincible's encounter with the Zorethians became cautionary tales told in council chambers, trading posts, and even around alien campfires. The message was clear. Humans didn't play by the usual rules of the galaxy. Their ships weren't just machines. They were puzzles wrapped in chaos, designed to confuse and outwit anyone who dared to probe too deeply. Captain Lyrek found himself summoned to address the leaders of the Zorethian collective one final time. Standing before the assembled council, he recounted the details of his mission once more, emphasizing the unpredictability of human technology. They don't rely on strength, he explained. Their defenses are built to overwhelm curiosity. They turn knowledge into a weapon. The council members listened intently, their expressions ranging from concern to admiration. One elder finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You have done your people a great service, Captain. Thanks to you, we now know the limits of our own understanding. Humanity is not a species to be underestimated." Lyrek bowed his head, accepting the praise with quiet humility. He had failed in his original mission, but his failure had become a lesson for his entire civilization. From that day forward, Zorethian scouts were ordered to avoid scanning human vessels at all costs. The risk was simply too great. Meanwhile, aboard the U.S. Invincible, Commander Eric Dawson received word that the mysterious energy signatures near the border had disappeared. Whoever had been watching them had decided to leave for now. Eric wasn't surprised. Humanity's reputation as an unpredictable and chaotic force was growing, and it seemed that even the most curious aliens preferred caution over confrontation. Lieutenant Laura Bennett leaned back in her chair, reviewing the data one last time. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked. Eric shrugged, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Probably. But next time, they'll think twice before getting too close." Chief Engineer Ryan Carter chimed in, wiping grease from his hands. "Let them sweat it out. If they're smart, they'll spread the word. Messing with Earth ships is a bad idea." The crew shared a laugh, but beneath the humor was a deep sense of pride. They had proven that humanity's survival depended not on brute force or superior weapons, but on creativity, adaptability, and sheer ingenuity. Every encounter with an alien species was a chance to teach a lesson, and every lesson made humanity stronger. As weeks turned into months, the stories of the U.S. Invincible continued to circulate throughout the galaxy. Other alien races added their own embellishments, turning the tale into something almost mythical. Some claimed that human ships could rewrite reality itself, while others whispered that their AI cores were alive, capable of outthinking even the cleverest invaders. The truth was far simpler, but no less impressive. Humanity's greatest strength lay in its ability to thrive in uncertainty. Where other species sought order and predictability, humans embraced chaos, using it as both a shield and a sword. Their ships were living networks, constantly evolving to stay ahead of threats. And their crews were resourceful, quick-thinking, and unafraid to take risks. In the end, the cleverest aliens learned why they refused to scan human warships. It wasn't worth the trouble. Humanity had proven that sometimes the best defense wasn't strength or firepower. It was confusion. It was unpredictability. It was the ability to turn an enemy's curiosity into their downfall. And so, the U.S. Invincible sailed on, guarding the edges of Earth's territory and standing as a symbol of humanity's resilience. Commander Eric Dawson watched the stars streak past the viewport, knowing that the galaxy was vast and full of dangers. But he also knew that humanity would always find a way to survive, not by being the strongest, but by being the smartest. Out there, among the stars, the legend of Earth's warships grew louder, a reminder to all who heard it. Never underestimate the chaos of human ingenuity. The ripple effects of humanity's encounter with the Zorathians continued to spread across the galaxy, reaching even the most distant corners of known space. Alien traders carried the story from planet to planet, embellishing it with each retelling. Some claimed that human ships could vanish into thin air, while others swore they had seen Earth vessels project illusions so convincing that entire fleets had been fooled. The truth was far less dramatic, but no less impressive. On board the U.S. Invincible, Commander Eric Dawson and his crew remained unaware of the growing mythos surrounding their ship. They focused instead on their mission, patrolling the edges of Earth's territory and ensuring the safety of nearby colonies. Intelligence reports suggested that alien activity in the region had decreased significantly since the incident with the Zorathians. It seemed that word had gotten around. Human ships were not to be trifled with. Lieutenant Laura Bennett spent her days monitoring sensors, always on the lookout for signs of trouble. "Sir," she said one afternoon, turning to Eric, "there's something strange happening near the outer rim. We're picking up faint signals, but they're different." Eric raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "They're fragmented, like pieces of a puzzle scattered across space. And they're coming from multiple directions." Eric frowned, stepping closer to her station. "Could it be a distress call?" Laura shook her head. "It doesn't match any known patterns. It's almost like someone is testing us." Chief Engineer Ryan Carter joined them, wiping grease from his hands. "Or maybe they're trying to figure out how our systems work without getting too close." Eric nodded slowly. "If that's the case, let's give them something to think about." He turned to Laura. "Send out another transmission. Make it cryptic, but not threatening." Laura grinned as she typed commands into her console. Moments later, the U.S. Invincible broadcast a new message into the void. "What has keys but can't open locks? A piano, or maybe your future." Back aboard the alien ships lurking at the edge of sensor range, confusion reigned. The fragmented signals they had sent toward the Invincible had yielded no useful data. Instead, they received this bizarre response, leaving their crews baffled. Was it a riddle? A warning? Or simply another example of humanity's penchant for unpredictability? Captain Lirak, now stationed at a Zorathian outpost near the border, heard about the latest exchange. He couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. Humanity had turned their own curiosity against them, using humor and chaos to keep potential threats at bay. "They're clever," he admitted to Vrax, who stood beside him. "I'll give them that." Vrax nodded. "And dangerous. Not because of what they can do, but because of what they might do. No one knows what to expect from them." As weeks passed, the mysterious signals near the outer rim faded away, replaced by an uneasy silence. It was clear that whoever had been probing the U.S. Invincible had decided to retreat, for now. But Eric knew better than to let his guard down. Space was vast, and there would always be others eager to test humanity's limits. One evening, Eric stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the viewport. Lieutenant Laura Bennett approached him, holding a cup of coffee. "Do you think we've scared them off for good?" she asked. Eric took a sip of his own drink, shaking his head. "Not for good. But for now, we've bought ourselves some time, and every day we have is a chance to get stronger, smarter, and better prepared. Laura smiled. You really think we can handle whatever comes next? I know we can, Eric replied confidently. Because we don't just adapt, we thrive. That's what makes us human. Far beyond Earth's borders, the legend of humanity's warships continued to grow. Aliens whispered of ships that defied logic, crews that outwitted invaders, and defenses that turned curiosity into chaos. The cleverest species in the galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Humanity wasn't just another civilization to study or conquer. They were survivors, innovators, and tricksters, a force unlike any other. And so, the U.S. Invincible sailed on, guarding the frontier and standing as a symbol of humanity's resilience. Out there, among the stars, the message was clear. Underestimating humans was a mistake no one would make twice.